Welcome to Casual Watch Talk, the podcast from the Casual Watch Reviewer YouTube channel. Join us as we talk everything watches, from watch collecting, the latest horology news and interviews. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe on your favourite podcast app. Let's dive into the show. Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 28 of Casual Watch Talk. Nearly hitting 30. I can't believe we did 25, Chris. But
know, right?
how have you been?
Swinging through them. Pretty good. Hunkered down, mask on, ready to podcast.
And we are joined again by the channel's, I would say, resident military expert, but all-rounder, TeeJ. How have you been?
Thanks. Well, it's a slog, but I'm in the same place as everyone, I'm sure. But I keep moving forward, and I like to take my mind off things now and then, and this is helping me out. So thank you.
It's amazing, isn't it, that I don't know. I mean, I've mentioned this before. I've been obsessing about watches as I've been getting more stressed with work. So then when I'm buying them, I'm like, did I buy this? Because, I'm like, I don't know if I'm making good decisions, but hey.
Yeah. Guaranteed. No. I'm looking back at my purchasing decisions over the last, went over my Amazon, like stuff that's hit the credit card over the last month. And my wife was like, what's this from Amazon? What's this from Amazon? What's it? And I was like, when did I buy saw blades? just random stuff. And like, oh yeah, that was a good decision.
We bought a used jet ski.
Good purchasing decisions.
Yeah, so,
there you go.
You know what? Actually, I think it was a good decision. I was against it, but it's been a sanity checker for us.
That's good.
So, it's all the rules are out the window.
Yeah, and you can't be sad on a jet ski. You cannot frown while riding a jet ski. So
no, that's true. So thumbs up.
So should we kick this off? Should we do our watch obsessions then? And now that we've just been talking about our obsessions online, TeeJ, why don't you kick it off? Have you had a watch obsession this week?
Yeah, I sure have. So for me, and I don't know if others have heard of this, it's a micro brand, so it shouldn't be a shocker because I follow those a lot. But it's a brand called Roux, French word for wheel, and it's the TPS watch series, race inspired. Essentially a $300 Speedmaster quartz watch, in that vein, and it achieves what the Speedmaster achieves for me, in that it looks elegant but toolish all at once. It's a delicate balance, but I think they did an amazing job with the design of it. And it's unlike a lot of the Mecca quartz that don't have running seconds. This one has them at 6 o'clock, so they've corrected that pet peeve. So I won't have to cover that one. But it's just really impeccable, and I can't believe it's under $300. So that's the trigger that I've just been waiting, very itchy to pull during COVID. But maybe the jet ski bumped me out of buying that. And I still have my Speedmaster, but long term, I think, the cost is probably going to be overwhelming. I'm saving it for my son. So eventually, I think when I shelve it, it's nice to know that there'll be something affordable yet still high quality and looking great. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Roux is a very cool brand. A very design focused brand. They love the marriage of motorsports and watches, and that clean sort of clean modern design that they go for. They have not only the Roux watch on Instagram, but they have their design Instagram, which I follow as well. I follow both of them. They're great, and I picked up a strap from them because just the design was clean, this gray with like little dots on it, and just super clean design. But their stuff looks very cool always.
Yeah, they kind of evolved. I remember there's another brand like Autodromo, isn't there, that they've done those vintage inspired, but I think some of their designs are a bit probably divide opinion. I think one of them I liked, but the others I think I wasn't crazy about them. Whereas Roux, at least they have that nice design language, but also they're like modest about it as well. Chris, do you want to? What's your watch obsession this week?
So this week, I was looking at the watch box, and Sam, I think you're rubbing off on me because I was like, could I get rid of one of these? Do I have to keep all of these? Which one of these do I not need anymore? And so a serious look at the stuff in the watch box, at the collection, I don't know anything more than that, but I will say I've moved some stuff around in my watch box, and I hold up the 3-watch, the 4-watch, the minimal watch collection. I sort of hold that up a little bit more on a pedestal now. You minimalist folk that can get it down to 1 or 2, and I think I've got it down to just 4 that I could live with forever. And 3-hander would be the Zinn, my Bell & Ross GMT, my Zinn Bell & Ross chronograph, and then my Solar G-Shock. Did I say 3? I meant 4.
So, it's already gone up. We've already added one.
You're trying. That's
right. Exactly. And then for the fans, no, just kidding. But I mean that, like, so I said, like, could that be it for me? Could I do that? But then I've got that 90s, and speaking of Rue, like that 90s Bell & Ross 144 that's in mint condition, and I don't want to scratch it up and I don't want to mess it up, and so I'm like, I can't, and I have a little like sparkle on it already, and so like I said, you're affecting my watch decisions, but that was definitely my obsession this week is looking at the watch box. And,
like the opposite of a watch obsession. It was actually obsessing about reducing your watches.
Right, like I'm obsessing about this too much. Is I clean this out, cleaning the brain out, cleaning the room out, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I've had such a weird week with watches. For a start, Uncle Seiko released a new flat link bracelet, and he sent me 2 Speedmasters. So
I saw that, yeah.
Yes. Great video.
Yeah, it's when people keep saying, "Oh, do you not miss your Speedmaster?" I'm like, well, if when I go to Bob's Watches, they didn't have like the limited edition 50th anniversary. If Uncle Seiko wasn't sending me them in the post, then I might have a minute like to forget that I ever owned one.
Right.
But he did a really good job of that. They're vintage inspired, so they're not the solid. They're definitely a homage to those vintage straps, and I think his kind of dedication and his just willingness to try stuff with watch bracelets, it's to be commended. I think he's doing a good job.
Yeah. I mean, he's done like you almost like renamed him, like, because he's done it definitely. Like, he's known in Seiko for all of the vintage stuff, for all the bracelets and the straps that you can't sort of get that were issued on those 60s, 70s Seikos, 70s Seikos. Now kind of moving over and doing it for Omega Speedmaster.
Yeah, and TeeJ, thanks for the pictures where you featured your US-Mexico Holzer, is it? I couldn't work out the pronunciation of it.
I prefer that one, I think, to the one that you just reviewed, but I'm kind of torn, really debating it. Maybe I'm just trying to save $89, but I do like those, the all brush finish flat link ones that he just came up with. But I think that US-Mexico one is probably my favorite of all of them. It's just so perfect.
That are included in the review were awesome. Thanks for that. Well, 2 other things. Somebody sent me one of those, a company sent me one of those DIY watch kits.
Oh, yeah.
Where they send you all of the component pieces, your strap, the case, the bezel, the dial, the hand, the rehole, all in separate little containers in like a zip thing. I actually filmed the whole me creating it.
Oh, okay.
But Chris, I mean, getting those hands on, I mean, that's the worst bit of it. Everything else is just slotting it in like Legos kind of thing, but those hands, I don't know how they could make it easier though, especially that second hand, and they actually made a video dedicated to just putting the second hand on, but no matter what you do,
it's so it is 2, so the let's see, the hole in the dial is 2 mil, so the hour hand is half of that, so it's probably a mil. And then the minute hand is another, 0.25 smaller. And then the second hand, you're down to tenths of millimeters there, trying to get on that little post. Yeah.
And what they did as well, which was pretty cool, is they sent you 2 sets of the hands.
Oh, okay.
I think they just assumed that you're gonna.
They're like, you're gonna grub this one up.
I think the second hand is still dragging a little bit on the minute hand of this, so. But I'll do a full review of it. The kit was good. It came in record time. I think it's a great little thing to do just for yourself to see whether, because I think the kits are only, I don't know whether $200 or $300. I'll do a review, but you get a nice sense of accomplishment that you've got a watch that you can made yourself a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah,
but so that was good. And then my true watch obsession, I know I'm doing like a 3-for-1 here, was I bought another Breitling B1. So I had my Breitling B1 and I do like it a lot. The dial, I just couldn't. I'm cooped up inside, social distancing, and I'm obsessing about a watch that was made in 1997.
Actually, today I was just thinking, like, I was looking at a bunch of watches, and then I was just like, I just want someone else's opinion on this to know if I'm not insane.
Yeah.
Sam, I saw that B1 of yours peeking on your Omega Uncle Seiko video. So you could see it there on the left.
Yeah.
I don't know if I commented on it, but it was neat to see it saying hello to everyone.
Yeah, and then I originally, when Chris saw the first cut of that, it wasn't in frame because for any eagle-eyed viewers, you'll see that I left my keyboard on top of the books. So there's like keyboard and then 2 books. I was like, oh, I can't believe I did that. So then I cropped it, but then Chris was just like, "Oh, just
I didn't even notice it. I just saw the watch and I was like, ooh. He's like, keyboard. It's all good.
This one is a grey dial.
Oh, okay. Not blue, but grey.
It's a grey dial, yeah. So it's got a nice colour to it, and I got it for a decent price. Sort of negotiated the guy down. I've contacted a few people about restoring the dial, and they're kind of like, look, there's no real chance of doing it. That even if there's no way you could paint that helicopter back on the dial. I mean, I need to put a picture on the Casual Watch Talk Facebook group, but there's no way you could, because it must have been like a decal or not like a screen print. However they do it.
Yeah, but something that's on the surface of it, like probably like a water slide or like an actual decal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the other one yet. I don't know.
Okay, but it's not this is not a backup. This is going to be a potential replacement.
Possibly a replacement. But I feel kind of I don't know. I feel like I'm custodian of this watch that's got some RAF history, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. Anyway, we could go on about this all day. We'll jump into the news anyway. So first story, I'll get you both kind of comment on this was this. I saw this on Watch Pro before, and I'm not really sure what they're thinking, but Rupert Murdoch, very famous for News Corp, Fox News. It looks like he's trying to buy a stake in the company MCH that owns Baselworld, or at least the Baselworld event. And it looks like there's a few other people that are trying to get in there as well. So I'm wondering what do you think? Do you think, well, first of all, do you think it's got any value? And do you think they could ever spin it back up again?
Maybe he's going for a buy low, sell high.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
How much is it worth? And how much are is this, this is all post Basel stuff. So it would be settled down. The price would be settled down, I assume.
I mean, there still might be a place for Baselworld because there's been nothing Breitling did a great virtual event, but nobody else has really, nobody's kind of like pivoted and seized the day, have they, this year to put on a kind of virtual watch show that a lot of people were interested in. So
I thought the big players there would do, and I know we talked about this, probably 10 episodes ago, but I thought the big players were going to pull an Apple computer sort of thing and say like, why be a bezel when we can just have our own show, and like just Rolex would just have our own show, or LVMH or whatever, just that's the LVMH show and lines out the block and we'll just control everything. So I really expected that, but you're right, it really hasn't. No one's really like jumped up to dig into that, and I haven't. Of course, the pandemic putting a big damper on everything. So, but not even in the works, which is interesting.
I would think they would have to change, not just for the pandemic, but just in general, right? The formula probably needs to change. So maybe he's got a vision for some reinvented Baselworld that's completely different. But it sounds like the industry just needs something different.
Yeah.
Because if he just resurrects the old, I don't know if that works anymore.
Yeah. And MCH Group looks like it's just that. I mean, it's just an event management group. I mean, it just like, but they're doing, they're doing 493 Swiss. What is that number? I'm not doing that conversion. CHF. Yeah.
Yeah, Swiss
I'm not doing that conversion in my head, but they seem to be doing very well. But they have that Miami Beach and Hong Kong show as well. So I know we've heard more maybe from some stuff coming out of Miami Beach and some stuff coming out of Hong Kong. So I don't know. Maybe the shift is there.
So next news story, we've got 3 today. So the next story is, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Timex, they're knocking out these vintage watches like nobody's business. And they've made a vintage watch that is essentially, it looks like that Casio, the standard Casio. But they've made it like a Pac-Man limited edition. So it's got a Pac-Man all the way around the outside. Now, when I read this, I was hoping, do you remember those watches from the 90s where you could play games on them? They were like the LCD ones.
Yep.
I'm sure they could have made it play Pac-Man, or at least have some tie-in other than just the printing on the outside of the dial.
Well, if they don't have the game, then it's a huge miss, I think.
I know, exactly.
Right.
Or at least have, when the alarm goes off, there's like a Pac-Man symbol or something. Because Casio used to be great at doing stuff like that, didn't they? I think there was like a Donkey Kong watch and things like that. So that's interesting.
Really missed out. Yeah, they really missed out. I don't know on gold that. I don't know on gold. That one does. I don't know what the draw is there.
I am out.
Yeah.
Well, we'll quickly move on. And then, of course, you can't go on a Facebook group. You can't go on Instagram with, I'm half saying this from jealousy, but I am amazed that Tudor released, if anybody's not heard it, people are calling it the Blue Bay. But anyway, it's the blue Tudor Black Bay 58. Yep. And everybody seems to have one.
Yep.
Reviewers have one. They announced it and there was reviews coming out. And we're not talking like the biggest channel, TGV or Teddy Balbazar. Jenna Ellie, she had one.
And she kind of called them out like 3 days before. I was watching her. She had like a quick video where she had gotten a hold of the price list for that was released for July, and like 3 days before. And it was just the generic price list with all of the model numbers, all the references, and all the prices. And yeah, they apparently, her and her husband just scanned down it and then like noticed that they had a new reference and a new serial number for a new Black Bay. And then they derived that, they basically assumed that it was going to be blue. And they made a guess and they did a Photoshop and everything. And I think it was maybe 3 days, maybe 2 days later, she had one.
This was predictable. I mean, I thought they might just change the bezel, but it does mean, I think, that Tudor will never do the Tudor Submariner snowflake, will they? Yeah. Because they've...
First, for me, it reminds me of the Tudor Submariner. I would love to own that watch in a modern style. With modern silicone seals and modern water resistance, etc. Cool watch. I'll start with that. But secondarily, I feel like the pandemic sort of played in their favor, because normally you would get these people, where they do a shipment of watches. It's like the new game console that shows up at the mall, where somebody's in the back of a Best Buy and they're like, yeah, well, there's 700 copies of the new Rockstar game. So do you want to know what it looks like? You know what I mean? So I feel like because no one was at the mall, no one was at retail, I feel like they just sort of quietly shipped these out because, everyone has them. Like our local mall in Orange County was like, come on down and pick one up. We have, a bunch of them.
Well, that's the same mall that I was on a 9-month waiting list for the original Black Bay 58. I was on that long. I just cancelled it. I just cancelled it in the end. But have you seen it, TJ? What do you think of it?
Well, I agree with Chris as far as, so I at my last job in Hawaii, there was a young sailor there, and he had an original Tudor sub from probably the 60s or 70s that his grandfather gave him. And, he's not a watch guy, but he just loved it and I just told him, I said, this is amazing. It was in amazing condition. It had I think 3, 6, and 9 are kind of a dagger looking triangle, really sharp, right? But then the other indices are circles. So it's just super classic look. And I've seen homages in micro brands that make them, but sometimes I just wonder why Rolex and Tudor won't just make their old stuff. It seems to be very popular around other brands to go and reissue something older. But think about the most prized Rolex, the Mill sub, or these old Tudor subs. Just make it the same way, same look,
right.
Same everything, just new. Give me a 40 millimeter Tudor Snowflake, or, I mean, they're just incredible watches. And when I look at the vintage versions, they're so amazing. But that said, I think the Blue Bay is terrific. I mean, a lot of respect for it. It's beautiful. I like black dials myself, but you can't deny that it's really, really nice.
I still prefer the original one because it had the gilt hands, and I think the gilt hands and the gilt indices really made it pop. But one of the frustrating things for me is not only has everyone got one, but everyone's got one with the metal bracelet. And that was a real crime, that I think, of Tudor, to not have as many, because I had to get mine on the NATO strap, and it ended up really... That was one of the reasons I sold it. I was really annoyed about the fact that the metal bracelet was $800. I've made no bones about the fact.
Had you bought it with it would have been what, $200 more or something?
Yeah, it was yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was nominal, really. And then I'd never seen one with a bracelet in a store. I'd only ever seen it with the NATO or the leather strap on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely, for me, and we're having this conversation over on the Facebook group, it's fascinating for me just to watch, sort of, just to see how that whole thing, a lot of times we pontificate on here and we say like, oh, well, this is important. And like, oh, no one's going to buy that because it's not sapphire, or cost certification, or like this movement, or in-house movements. Yeah. Like we were talking about in-house movements the other day. And it's like, yeah, it comes down to the fact they made a blue one. So we all wanted a blue one. Like, it just, blue one with the bracelet, and just apparently that's what we wanted, and that's what everybody gets. But I don't know if Tudor is one of those brands that's listening to its customers. I guess it's definitely listening to its sales.
Or at least they're not going limited edition and you can't get one, or that's 9 months waiting list. If people want them, they're available, which to me makes sense when you want to make money. People want your product, you provide it in the numbers needed, right?
Well, that's an interesting point you made. I mean, that beautiful tag the other day that we saw that was a limited edition is Rolex, as far as I can remember, they don't do limited editions. And everyone wants to try and emulate Rolex, but nobody plays by that playbook. I don't understand why Tag would make a limited edition version of a watch that is going to be incredibly popular. Like, why would you limit the audience? I've never understood this at all. It's better to sell 100,000 at $4,000 instead of 100 at $6,000. Yeah, I don't think Tudor have ever made a limited edition as well. So they're obviously they're playing by Daddy's playbook or whatever.
That's right.
Okay, well, before we dive into the main topic of the show, which I'm looking forward to, it's going to be watch pet peeves. Let's just pause for a very quick ad break. Well, welcome back, everyone. The second part of Casual Watch Talk. This is going to be a fun one, I think. It's watch pet peeves. And I mean, we occasionally refer to them on the podcast, but I think this is going to be where we've really had to think about this. So how do you want to play this, guys? Do you want to do one each, or do you want to go through... I mean, I've got 5. So do you want to go do one each, or do you want to go through all 5?
Oh, geez.
Go around.
I don't know if I have that. No. Maybe I'll just comment.
Yeah, we'll get you good and angry.
Yeah, I bet that your 5 and your 5, there's some crossover there. So I'll comment as we go. Let's do that.
Oh, you're gonna
I'll referee.
You're gonna literally play Switzerland.
Yes.
You're gonna be the middleman.
Well,
okay.
Maybe you can vote which one of us is the angriest.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It will be legitimate or not. Got it. Go.
Well, maybe I'll do one, and then TJ, you can do one, and then we'll go back and forth. Right. My first one is no date on a watch. I like a date on a watch, even though for years it doesn't make sense to me. This because for years I wore a Speedmaster with no date on it. But now I can't live without the date on a watch. That's what irked me about that Black Bay 58. So
there's no date. So you have to have a date.
I feel like I have to have a date on a watch now.
Okay, we can go down this. Yeah, we can go down this rabbit hole because there's ways to do it too. So my pet peeve with no date would be the design. So if you're gonna screw up the watch's design by putting a date window with the numbers at 45 degrees, just some random spot on the dial, then I'd rather not have a date. But what do you think, TJ?
Good point, Chris. I hate the like a large cutout with chrome edging and all that. I like a nice subtle same color. Really, 6 o'clock, thing's the perfect place for a date. But I actually didn't buy my Speedmaster for a long time because of no date, but I kind of grew to appreciate it because now I don't wear it all the time. But when I pick it up, I just set the time and go. And I have a date automatic watch that when I pick it up to wear it, it's a bit of a hassle to adjust it because I don't want it to have the wrong date because, I'm obsessive.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I think no date is really good for a watch that you wear from time to time, but it's terrible for day to day. Like I do need the date as well.
What about dive watches, Sam?
Oh, I love them with it. I mean, the date with the chrome window. Give it whatever watch that is. I'm buying it.
No,
I love it. I mean, this that Phoebus. I just reviewed a Phoebus, and they did a great job. Their dial is it's to mimic the sea, so it's blue in the center, and it sort of sunbursts out to black, and they've done the date window in black with a white thing, and it just works in the design. I love it. The turtle that's got the day and date, even better.
With the turtle,
even better.
I do like that.
Yeah. I'll say there was one that you just maybe not that you reviewed, but you were thinking of pulling in. That's right. It was actually the Longines, the 3-hander that we were talking about. They have the 40 mil and the 42 mil, and for whatever reason on one of them, I think the smaller one or the bigger one, I think the bigger one actually, they like cut the date window into the number 3. They didn't just omit the 3, they just left like the B part of the 3. So it was like, oh cool, so it's got 12, B, 6 and 9. It's like, what? So anytime it cuts into the design, I agree, but yeah, I don't know, Sam, just there has to be some watch love for no date, I think.
Yeah, that's an unpopular opinion in the community. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I know. I'm playing by my own rules. I'm a rebel.
That's all right. All right.
So TeeJ, that's my one. I kicked it off the curb there and perjured myself, I think. So.
Well, mine are going to be a little odd sounding because based on the number of times I see these pet peeves, that clearly not a lot of people care about them, especially designers. But so the first one, I don't even know where to start, but I think I'll start with the one I've already declared earlier somewhere on the Facebook group. But I hate when there's a large gap between the tip of the minute hand and the minute marker so that it doesn't really come quickly to the eye which minute you're looking at. So between, is it 7 or 8? I don't know because it's about 3 inches between kind of thing. And I think posted a photo where I highlighted an example and Citizen and Seiko seem to do it quite a bit. But to me, either the point of the minute hand either just hits the mark or it overlaps. And the overlap is even better because when you want to look down really fast and see exactly what time it is quickly, I need that. Otherwise, I just don't understand the gap. I don't know what you get out of that space. So it just seems like it's too short.
Yeah, and you're also talking about watches, especially that have all of the have a bunch of little micro minute markers all the way around. Right. I've seen it with brands that are notorious and I just mentioned one where they switch from like a 40 mil to a 42, but they keep the same hands. I've seen that. Like I think there was like a Spinnaker that did that where they just were like, oh, I'll just get these hands. So
it's okay if it's a dress watch or some kind of funky, modern looking artistic thing. But when it's trying to be a military or a chronograph or a pilot watch, then there's really no excuse for it.
Yeah.
So that one that will just kick the watch right out of the shopping cart for me.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's really good. Did you see that new Christopher Ward? They've just released a chronograph, quartz chronograph. It looks really good, actually, like a racing-inspired one. Anyway.
Oh no! Now I'm gonna have to go look.
Yeah, it's quite nice actually. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a well thought out good one.
Yeah, that's valid.
So my next one, where the numbers are cut off on the dial, where the dial has numbers, but either the chronograph subdials or there's so I'm obsessed with this Breitling B1. The next one afterwards called Airwolf, which apart from it being named after an awesome TV show,
that's right. Yes.
I don't think that's the inspiration.
80s kids, yeah.
Exactly. For some reason the 6 at the bottom, they've cut it's an ani-digi, so the digi dial at the bottom cuts off the top of the 6. So essentially it's a circle with just a tiny little I just don't understand why they've done it. Why I just can't work out why they've done that, why they wouldn't just leave it as something else. But it's just bizarre to me, especially with chronograph, where it's like a 3, or the 3 has been cut off, or the 6 has been cut off, or the 12. It just throws the dial off a little bit. And I know El Primero and some of the big brands do this, but I don't know. What do you guys think on that one?
For me, I agree with you, and I've seen watches where it cuts it off, and like especially the subdials, when the subdials start to like when you've got like a bicompacts, or you get the 3, you get like a Valjoux where it's you get the 3 subdials, and there's not going to be a lot of room for that anyway. I feel like it's just better to omit the number than try to put in like a sliver of it. But I have the Khaki King, the Hamilton Khaki King, and it's got the full day spelled out, date at the top, centered at the top, makes it kind of like a T. And the fact that it cuts the 11 and the 1 off, like apparently that just boils people, like they just can't do it. But I love that watch. I've never had a problem with it. I was like, oh, I didn't really notice that. Yeah. So I guess I would say it's open to interpretation, but more than not, especially on a chronograph, like if you're going to cut off 70% of the number, just don't leave us with the little tail for the 9.
We should have done a disclaimer before starting this. We should have done like a parental advisory, where they say, don't watch this if you're worried about extreme violence. We're like, don't listen to this podcast if you are as obsessive as us, because we don't. Exactly. Because people are just throwing their watches in the bin now.
Yeah, the industry is going to tank.
Yep. The obsessive compulsive. If you haven't noticed something on your watch up until now, we're sorry.
I think some of the companies will send hitmen after us for discouraging sales, but we shall carry on.
Yeah. So TeeJ, what do you think about the cutting off the numbers?
I don't mind it so much. I guess on yours, I was going to ask if it's a chrome polished shiny number or if it's a loomed number.
Oh, wow. He's got categories. I love it.
Yeah. No, this I didn't buy this Airwolf one, but it once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like I've got a mini Clubman, and it's the old one, and the new one apparently on the back where it says Clubman. Some people are really triggered by the fact that it's got van doors at the back. Basically, some people are triggered by the fact that it's got club and then man on the other side, so it's not balanced. And that's one of them things. Once you see it, you just can't.
Right.
You just can't unsee it. There's people that just they're just taking dental floss to the back to take the numbers off,
or
to get
shifting them over.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the numbers cut off, and then like Chris said, just if it's well executed and you can still tell what it is, but once your 6 turns into a 0, then it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, that was my one. TeeJ, you're up now.
Okay. So mine is when so there's a theme here on legibility, but when minute marks are replaced at 6 o'clock, probably usually about 7 of them are cut out for the made in, and I mentioned this one before. So there's a couple watch I saw where the made in Germany or made in America, whatever, took out, and this was one of them I'm thinking of. I had the railroad track style minute marks, and so after 26 and between that and 34, those are the last marks you see. And so if you're at 27, 31, you have no idea what you're looking at, other than your brain interpreting the distance, right? But if minute marks are important, they're important, and if they're not, they're not. So I just don't like replacing them at part of the dial with words that you can easily put on the back or somewhere else. I don't really care where the watch is made on the dial. Just tell me on the back, kind of thing, or in the instruction manual. I'll ask when I buy it, but after that, I don't need to look at it every day. So I think that's a bad. I think that's a bad move when they and when you're making a watch it's supposed to be legible, like the one I'm referring to. I don't want to dime out the company because I have a lot of respect for what they're doing, but in this case, they were making a field watch, which it's all about legibility. And another one was a Pilot watch micro brand that you talked about recently. So both of them are all about how legible it is. And the watches were incredibly legible, except for this range of 7 minutes on the bottom. So that really got me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. And plus, if they were telling the truth, then it would be assembled in America, some parts from China, Swiss movement, and it would be right around the entire outside of the watch.
Right, exactly.
Just say planet Earth, move on.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. So my next one, and I hope I'm not stealing this from you, TeeJ, but it's the Mecha Quartz one, which is I detest Mecha Quartz movements where there is no running second hand. And I mean the VK64 Seiko movement where it's got a 24-hour indicator. Like, let me tell you something. If it's dark outside, it's PM. If it's light, it's likely
especially
AM.
if you can't set it. Like, that only helps you to know when the date change is going to happen when you're setting it. Like, that's the only time. Otherwise, you can't set it independently.
If you could, it would be amazing.
It
would be so amazing.
Right.
But, you know, Sam, I think I figured out like one possible use of that function, which is if you were in the military and you were deployed to somewhere in, let's say the Far East, and but you were setting your watch to Zulu or Universal Time because, the flying schedule, FAA, everybody's on it, then you might choose to set your watch that way. And then you'd want to know AM versus PM. But we typically just keep our watches local and do the math in your head for the conversion. So I don't know of anyone that's done that, but I could see that's a possibility. But when you have that dial, just give me the seconds. That's the VK64 versus 63. And especially if you're making a military themed watch, we need to know the seconds. We do a lot of things within seconds, tolerances, and I need to know the exact time right now, not the minute. I need to know the exact time. So it's not a lot to add, just to give me that third dial.
Yeah, it seems to be a darling of the micro brands, this as well, that a lot of micro brands started using this VK64 movement. And I hate looking at watching it still.
Yeah. I think it also, it might just be for battery consumption, I think.
Yeah.
They might be able to, because like you put in, you have a watch that's still, and you put a battery in it, like that's going to last, 6 years, whatever, 5-6 years. But as soon as you're doing running seconds, and even if you're doing a 2 second or, a true 1 second tick, I've seen a lot of them that do a 2 every, it'll tick 2 times a second, which isn't too bad. It looks decent if you're used to the mechanical sweep. But I think it's just a battery saving thing. But then I bought a wall clock that has sweeping smooth seconds, and it runs on a AA, and it's like, I don't know when it's going to run out. It's like, I think it'll go for like a year.
Yeah.
And it's like all the time. Like the battery is like, I know it's bigger, but still like it's a giant wall clock and it's running all the time. So you would think like, all right, guys, like, come on, you can save some electricity here. You can save some energy here. So.
Look, right now I'm wearing a watch quartz with a 50-21 movement. I think it's Ronda. And so it's bicompact. So it looks just like those mechas. It does not have the sort of false mecha looking sweep or anything like that. It's a straight up quartz. But this one's, I haven't changed the battery in 4 years, and it gives me running seconds on the right and elapsed minutes in 30-minute counter on the left, so I can actually read it, and it's perfect. So wherever I can comment to say, please use this movement instead of the mecha.
Right.
But a few folks are, and I'm glad, because that movement I think is a better choice.
Yeah.
So I hope I didn't pinch that off your list, did I, TeeJ?
No. In fact, I'm segueing nicely into my own next pet peeve, which is the illegible minute counter on a chronograph. Because, like I said, the one I have right here is a 30-minute one, so really easy to tell. And there's a thick hash mark at 5, 15, and 25. So really, and I wear it when I run, and I can super look down or under G-force, and boom, there it is. I know exactly what it is. And they don't make a lot of like the Lemania 5100, where you've got the center minute and center seconds going around like a big minute hand. So, I'm sort of accepting the fact that it's going to be a smaller register. But I've owned a few. I had a Seiko chronograph at one point where it was a 60-minute counter around on the subdial, and I just couldn't tell where it was at. I couldn't tell between 7 or 8. And at that point, then if I'm a minute off, why am I timing things? So, and sometimes it's too small.
And I feel like that Valjoux layout, that 30-minute is just right. Like any smaller, and I wouldn't be able to see it either. I totally.
Yeah. And then sometimes I actually saw a few where it actually doesn't have a mark for each minute. So you've got just every 5. So look down at which one of those is the counter for the minutes, because none of those have the
well, I'm 2/3 away from the 5. You're
right.
Like, I don't even know what that means.
Is that what, so that's one of those sort of, we're trying to look like a chrono, but don't even try to use it as such unless you're measuring something in increments of 5, or you trust your eye to discern 2 versus 3. I don't know, but just, my top 3 pet peeves are all about being able to quickly read it. And if you're making a gold fashioned watch, go for it. But if you're making something with the word pilot or military and you violate these 3 pet peeves, then you're really not trying to make something usable, and then just stop. I guess it's I don't understand if you want to design it, there are pretty common principles to follow to make it work. But I always sort of question, the design team, what were they thinking when they're making a choice that makes the watch really hard to read for aesthetics?
I've got a question for you, TJ. What about the opposite? So aviation pilots. I mean, I watch a bunch of pilot YouTube stuff, and like everyone has got the Breitling. Everyone's got the Breitling Navitimer. What about the Navitimer, those style watches that are like, they've got the slide rule, they've got like, conversion for pounds and inches and just weight and plane and speed and all. I mean, is there a point where it's like, this is just too much?
The point is when it has that feature on it, because, well, I'll tell you, so we don't use that stuff, even if they made a larger one. So flight school is all about learning to do those calculations in your head and do them quickly. And so you wouldn't be able, in a military aircraft that maneuvers, you really wouldn't be able to look down and fumble around with a bezel like that anyway. So, and I owned a watch that had that bezel on it, but never used it once. So it was just in the way. So I have never seen, I've seen Navitimers among some of my fellow aviators, but only in a dress shirt, going out. I've never seen them flying wise. The most common watches you'll see are plain old digital watches, Casio G-Shock kind of thing. You'll see analog digital was kind of my favorite. I had an old Citizen Navihawk analog digital. It did have that slide rule bezel, but it also had tons of other stuff, which I used. You'll see that. And now the newest kind of trend is like a multifunction GPS, Suunto or Garmin. And I had a physiological episode of a rapid decompression. And when I remember telling one of my flight surgeons about it, he said, "Oh, were you wearing a Garmin?" And I guess he wanted to know if, I guess,
you can get the data.
Yeah, get the data off and that's why a lot of folks
like
get
the pressure data and everything.
Yeah, so your internal cabin altitude. I actually did a few hours in the hyperbaric chamber because of that one, but I'm okay. So I'm a survivor. So all
right.
I got the bends and I lived.
But and aircraft have become a lot more more reliable as far as their avionics and with GPS integration. So I've seen quite a leap forward even since my first days. So the onus on what you bring in the cockpit on your wrist is, it's diminished. You can get by with just about anything. So I know a lot of folks will go with something mechanical and simple just out of a sense of tradition. So, like the Bremont watches, they'll do a squadron purchase with their squadron logo on it, things like that. So you'll see that a lot. And really, as long as it's very legible, glows in the dark really nicely, and you can read the time, you're okay. And so I kind of went back to that myself a long time ago and just kind of went with simple analog.
Okay, well, simple analog. All right, cool.
Yeah, but that's just me.
No, I think that's a good one. Yeah, because I heard about them Garmins. I thought it was something to do with, can they sense G-force as well because of the accelerometers in them, and they have like an alarm or... Did you remember that story, Chris? Maybe I'll have to look it up. There's like an alarm would go off if it sensed. Maybe it is something to do with blood pressure or anyway.
Well, cockpit pressure, so cabin altitude, right? So if your aircraft maintains a certain atmospheric pressure inside the cockpit that's not sea level but less than what it would be outside, and that's air coming through the engine bleed air system, and if there's a malfunction there, it may be hard to perceive.
Yeah, so it just stays at like 14, like whatever, 14 psi, whatever sea level. But you said a little less than sea level.
Well, it tracks up. It matches the ambient pressure. Most aircraft today will match ambient pressure up to a certain altitude, and then they'll park at that particular level.
Oh, okay.
And then they'll keep that for quite a while until it's really hard to do. And then at those higher altitudes, then it'll start to increase again. So there's every aircraft has its own curve for how you do that. So you're always.
If you have, so the idea is you can get, an altimeter works with the outside air pressure. But if you're in a pressurized cabin, you then cannot get what your altitude is because you're inside a pressurized cabin in a tube in the sky.
And you can get it. We have that. We have a cabin pressure. We have a cabin pressure gauge that tells you what the equivalent pressure is inside the aircraft.
Okay. But this is in your aircraft, not on your watch.
Correct. And then I guess the Garmin is essentially high fidelity tracking, data collection of that so that no one, that your gauge in the cockpit would just match what it is. It's analog. So once you land, no one can look at it and figure out what happened. But if you give the flight surgeon your watch, he can tell
watch,
you. Okay.
Right, exactly. Because so then your watch might like all of a sudden see like a huge spike in the pressure or a huge spike in the altitude that it was reporting. And that's not necessarily that you changed your altitude, it's that the pressure inside the cabin changed.
Exactly. Yeah, if you had a rubber seal give out or something like that.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, my next one then is GMT bezels where they really behave like dive bezels, where they're ratcheted. Or, this could be, Chris, you on the last podcast we talked about watches that with tachometers that also have the red and blue on them.
Yeah, the color choice of it, and also the fact that it's bidirectional versus unidirectional.
Yeah. So I notice a lot of people do this with GMT bezels. They ratchet them, whereas obviously it's more functional if you can go back and forth because you have to just keep twizzing it round and hope that you don't miss the one that you're after.
Yeah, I feel like it's a big miss when you get over like a $300 price point. When you get into like anything over like $300 price point mechanical and they're selling it as a GMT and it doesn't go backwards, you're just like, yeah, so we're -5, so I just want to go. And I got to go around, I guess. So yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, we mentioned that one where the brand was, the Kickstarter was trying to make everybody happy and they were offering, that Pepsi, what would be nighttime, daytime on a GMT, but that color choice in like a tachometer, other than the color choice, it doesn't make much sense. And I will chime in here with a side one on this. It definitely, all right, so this is Chris's first pet peeve. Here we go. Do not put a 24-hour bezel on a watch that doesn't have a GMT hand, that doesn't have a
well played. I love it.
I just can't do it. I see the Seiko monitors doing it, and it just that one. Whew, that one. That's tough for me. So that's my intro into that one.
That was a very worthy entrance into this category. I love it.
So that was my one. Okay, TeeJ, you're up unless you have any thoughts on the bidirectional GMT.
Well, I guess the only way I could see, I think Chris made a point of the price, right, is if it's a micro brand that's trying to offer like a customize your watch kind of a deal, and they're making a diver's watch, but you might get it with this, then I guess I could understand where they wouldn't go for the extra cost of giving you a different style bezel. So it's forgivable, I think, in that lower price point. But yeah, otherwise it's no bueno. So mine is going to be sort of proprietary lugs, so that you can't just swap out and put a NATO on it kind of thing when they've got those weird center thingies, and it's just like, this is the only bracelet you're going to put on this because nothing else will ever work. This is unique.
We're looking at you, Oris.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Citizen's done it now and then, and a few others, and that's another instant out for me because I like to we all do. We like try different straps or whatever. So if you're telling me that's the only choice,
or it's so close, or the spring bar is so close to the case that you can't get a NATO or really any other strap in because it's got there's no the metal, because the metal end piece is almost flush to it and the spring bar's in there. Yeah, that's. I've made a few comments. There was a Boulder watch that was like that.
I feel like that's worse than an odd size lug. Like, you know,
Yes.
I've got the 19, I've got a 21, I've had, you know, a couple, you know, okay, you go on Amazon, they make straps that are 19, they make straps that are 21, you'll find them, it's fine, it happens. but like that custom notch or the special metal clasp that has to be on there in order to connect it, that's a no-go for me too.
That's a really good... Yeah, and of course the Swatch as well, or that some of the G-Shocks where you have to buy the adapters for them. I know I bought adapters for my G-Shocks. Right, well, my final one, this is probably going to be controversial, and this is shots fired, as the kids would say. But some of my most popular videos, and this took me by surprise, was when I reviewed an Invicta Pro Diver. Now, I still maintain that Invicta Pro Diver is probably one of the best mechanical watches that you can get for under $80. Sometimes you get a bargain.
Yep.
But I had one today, actually, but more frequently than you would think is Invicta owners who I presume have the larger watches have to make some comment around masculinity for being able to wear one of these big Invicta watches. And I'm like, look, I've got news for you. You want to be a man or a gentleman? Be nice to people. Don't be an asshole. These are better indications than basically what watch you're wearing. It's almost like, oh, well, you wouldn't be able to pull one of these larger watches off. And you're like, dude, like, come on. Like, so that's my...
I think I mentioned this when the smaller, the U50 came out for Zin, the smaller dive watch. So the U1 and then the U50. I think it's the 50, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, something like that. Or U1.
The smaller version. And yeah, there was a little bit of knock on the forums where people were like, well, now they make it in a smaller size for you. You know, like, oh, you can't handle the regular U1, you know? And I was like, come on, guys, you're killing me.
Yeah, and I always remember what you said, TJ, about the it would be more dangerous to have a really large watch in a cockpit in case you had to eject or something, and you might, you don't want to get your watch caught on the way out.
That's right. Yeah, I remember because I was watch shopping in one of my first squadrons, and someone gave me that warning story. And my first aircraft was one where crew of 4, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, 4 ejection seats, and the canopy had a railing down the middle connecting the 2 pieces of glass. So basically 2 separate canopies, one for the front crew, one for the back. And unless you ejected the canopy first or blew it, you would basically just punch through the glass. So if you were sitting on either side of the aircraft, you were brushing by a very thick metal rail on your way out, the center piece of the glass.
Super speed.
With a huge rocket. And one guy did, in fact, catch his watch and tear off, part of his hand in the process. Whoa. So that was always the cautionary tale of, folks telling me, like, well, be careful what you get, So
big heavy
one
watch.
Of those. As a young guy, you're like, what? And then it turns out a lot of those were true, those stories.
Like you always say, like, oh, 2 Gs, 3 Gs. Well, you're like, yeah, that's your body weight times 2, times 3, times 4. So you just take whatever's on your wrist. You're like, okay, that now weighs 8 pounds. So, I mean, like, where's your arm going to go now?
Yeah. And trying to actuate a switch or something in the backseat of the Prowler, a lot of the switches were just right in front of you. You'd have to reach up, and doing that under whatever amount of G's actually is challenging, especially if it's a fine motor skill. And so you're just like, and so I could just use your non-watch hand, I guess.
I am manly enough to have this giant watch.
My Spider-Man Invicta 48mm version.
Right.
Awesome.
Click the button.
So that was my final one. TJ, what's your final one to see us home here?
So this one's, I don't know, this one may sound a little crazy, but so I'm a 20mm lug guy. I think it's great. And I know that some watches need 22, and I know some watches need 18 or 19, right? So I buy that. But I guess what I'm upset is when a watch comes out that seems perfectly sized for 20, but they make it 22 for some random reason. So I saw one. It was a Hamilton Quartz chronograph pilot watch, beautiful. And when you look at the lugs, it's almost like they cut metal out of one of them to make it a 22. And if they just kept it symmetric and just followed the typical proportions, then it would be 20. Then you see some that go the other way that are 20 that clearly shouldn't be, like the Bulova Moon watch, which is just quite large, but they're still trying to make it a 20, and that's not going to help anybody either. So it's just, I guess, I don't know if the pet peeve is stay proportional or just make watches that fit me better and make them all 20s. I don't know.
20 millimeter NATO forever.
and that was a close competitor pet peeve with the 19 or 21 millimeter lugs. I actually do find those challenging, but I get it. I have a watch that's 19 and I just put a 20 on it, just a little pinch. It's really not a big deal. And now on the internet you can find anything. So I think that one sort of faded as a legitimate pet peeve, but the ones that are just seem imbalanced, and especially when the watch seems so perfect for someone that loves 20s.
Yeah, I reviewed that watch, actually, that Hamilton one, and I made the same. I bought that quartz watch. I made the same thing because it was, like you say, it was almost, it was out of proportion. They were like, oh, we are definitely doing a 22 millimeter strap on this, and then they just kind of like cut it. Yeah.
And and it's only it was only like a 40 mil watch, right?
41, I think. 41. Yeah, so it's perfectly Speedmaster size.
Yeah,
it would have been great with 20.
Yeah,
I would buy it right now if it was 20.
Yeah, if you peak 44, so if you're up in a turtle land, Seiko, 22, okay, fine. But 40, 41, that's got to be 20 mil. I agree.
That's a great one.
Valid.
So, Chris, that you've heard are both our top 5 pet peeves each. Now, which one of us is going crazy, or which one do you think is the best?
I think definitely a little bit of crazy, a little bit of obsessive. Yeah, definitely some. It's a tough one. It's a tough one because, yeah, Sam, with the date, I don't know. The markers, and yeah. I think on practicality. I think TeeJ is going to take it with the indices lining up, the numbers and the markers, the minute, seconds markers lining up. I think that's the most valid.
Oh, the minute
out
hand.
There. Yeah, I think that's the most valid one. But second would definitely be I definitely chimed in with the GMT stuff for sure. I think TeeJ was definitely hitting us with the practical application of such. You should get some cash from for
like a design consultancy,
right? Consultancy on watch company consultancy. Oh, so you'd like to make a military watch, huh? Well, that's interesting.
They don't seem to be asking a lot of us these questions.
You might want to know what it's like to be pulling 5Gs and have to hit a switch, and possibly have to eject.
I would gladly give my opinions.
Right.
Yeah. We asked 20 naval aviators and then ignored them all.
Yeah. But I definitely, TeeJ, definitely appreciate you coming on, because that, for me, that sort of real world. I mean, I love the tool watch aesthetic, and that real world, this is what it has to be in order to function as a tool. Definitely, I got to give that to you. I definitely appreciate your insight there.
Yeah, well, your collection reflects that really nicely. Those Bell and Rosses and Zins, I mean, they understand. Those are beautiful and aesthetically beautiful and functionally amazing. So
yeah,
so you've chosen well.
Well, guys, you'll have to let us know. Head on over to the Casual Watch Talk Facebook group, where you'll find all 3 of us quite active on there. And thanks to everyone that's joined this week as well. Big shout out to you all. As always, we appreciate you listening. TeeJ, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk.